Well, so I'm sure everybody has heard of Rat Fink.
And if they haven't, they should.
Well, if they haven't, they should. Actually, there was a time in America where if you said Rat Fink, everyone knew exactly what you were talking about. These days, maybe not so much.
I was introduced to him in 4th grade, so yeah.
I don't even know when. He was just ubiquitous. I just grew up with the guy, He was my favorite cartoon character.
Yeah, I had a classmate that would draw. He was kind of a quiet guy, and he'd draw this figure, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So he enlightened me and introduced me to Rat Fink.
Well, that's one of the cool things about Rat Fink. You didn't read Rat Fink, you drew Rat Fink.
Yeah, he was something.
Yeah, he was this character, and he was all over the place. He was drawn on hot rods mostly. Right. But it's not like he was a cartoon strip or a Saturday morning cartoon show. No. He was just a character, and you got to know Rat Fink by drawing Rat Fink.
Right, and what a character he was. You had to understand Rat Fink. Yeah. And the more I learned of Rat Fink, the more I began to understand where he was coming from. And I decided there might be a little Rat Fink in me.
Yeah, I think there's a little Rat Fink in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's June, and the first week of June is always the Rat Fink Reunion in Manti, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Big Daddy Ed Roth, the creator of Rat Fink, sort of retired to Manti, Utah from Los Angeles, where he had created all of his hot rods and chopper bikes and the various bits of mayhem that were his life. And he decided to go very rural and very Mormon at the end of his life and moved himself to Manti, Utah, where he married a friend of yours.
Right.
And so then we found ourselves connected to this person that we had grown up with forever, this cartoon character, Rat Fink, who ultimately brought us together. We would,
so funny. In
June, we would not be sitting here married to each other if it were not for Rat Fink. So anyway, we're off to the Rat Fink Reunion again, which is the standard June fair for us here in rural Utah. So check it out, the Rat Fink Reunion. The Rat Fink Reunion takes place in the interesting, if not palatial, home of Ed Big Daddy Roth and his wife Eileen. Ed is no longer with us, but Eileen still lives here, and this is where they hold the Rat Fink Reunion every June. It also includes a really big car show over at the park in Manti. Did I mention that the home is rather unusual? It includes this really large, 6,000 square foot or so museum space and a retail and online store for all manner of trinkets and Rat Fink memorabilia. The main house is just as esoteric. This is the basement with all these murals painted on the wall of Rat Fink and his friends. In truth, most of this stuff was added after Ed passed away. That's when they added the Angel Fink to the ceiling there. But a lot of this stuff was over at Ed's shop about 2 blocks away. Now, I mentioned that Ed became a Mormon toward the end of his life. He hadn't been at all happy with the way his life was going and wanted to reinvent himself and moved to Manti. Ed was best known for building hot rods, but he'd gotten his start doing pinstriping and sign art, and a lot of pinstripers and so on come to the convention. Now, we hired Keith Eccles to paint us this cool Speed Shop sign with the Toyman rocket ship on it in matching colors to the car we're in, BDX-9, the white and blue Mustang. After the car show, we plan on ensconcing it over at Garage Mahal. There's a dozen or so car pinstripers here. This is Coop. He's pinstriping a Sebring. That's pretty darn cool. Coop is cool too. Uh-oh! That's the striping box of Shane 6, one of the cooler stripers around here and a cool Rat Fink artist. Most of those murals in the house, including the Angel Fink, were painted by Shane 6 here. I'm always amazed watching a good striper lay paint onto a car. It's just flat magic. I mean, If I tried a stunt like this, I'd just ruin the car. Now let's get back to Coop. He's making some shirts here. Ed went into the shirt business. As a matter of fact, he pretty much invented the graphic tee. At the car shows, people were having him paint Rat Fink and other things onto leather jackets, and it occurred to him that if he could mass produce this stuff onto t-shirts, he could make a lot of money, and in fact he did, and in so doing pretty much invented the graphic t-shirt. What Coop is doing here is silk screening. These are Ed's original screens in the museum. Ed figured out that he could silk screen directly onto the t-shirts and then sell them at the car shows. Later, he even started just selling them through mail order. Karen and I had shirts made up, and we had Coop sign them, of course. This is one of Ed's shops in L.A. where he worked with the Baron and Kelly and Von Dutch. Von Dutch was the striper supreme at the shop. He sort of invented hot rod pinstriping. This is Ed's Toyota. It's kind of a piece of crap, isn't it? It's on display at Galpin Ford in Van Nuys, California. Ed would take this thing around to the car shows. Heck, he even slept in this thing and used it as a pallet as well. So in that time-honored tradition, crazy painter Nico has fixed up this car and given it a rather unique paint job, and yes, he uses it as a palette as well. He's got some cool Rat Finks and portraits on here, although you could say that the car is a piece of Rat Fink junk. Eileen reworked the museum this year. There's been a little bit of remodeling to make the store side a bit bigger. A bunch of things got put away, and a bunch of really cool things got put out on display. The museum is full of things that were made by Ed, things that were made by other Rat Fink artists that have donated or their stuff's been bought for the museum. These are model car kits that Ed produced back in the 1960s. Along with the t-shirts and other trinkets, they made a ton of plastic models. A lot of those are back on the market, and you can buy them again. But most of this stuff is just the crazy crap that Ed built for the sheer fun of building it. Ed was featured in a lot of magazines. Heck, he published some magazines. And this is the top hat and tails that Ed wore to a lot of the car shows. But the big thing at the Rat Fink Reunion is the car show. This car is called the Baja Bandito, and it has a really elaborate paint job. This is all hand-striped pinstriping, has a classic Ed Roth style bubble top. In fact, there's always at least one car that shows up that's really an homage to Ed's style. Although this is an homage to Von Dutch, a flying eyeball. But generally speaking, just looking at this car, you'd swear you're looking at an Ed Roth car. Now, here's an interesting ride. This is an electric hot rod. No doubt some of you out there will remember Ready Kilowatt. But the car is cool. It's sort of an alter ego to a Tesla. I suppose it's a sign of the times that someone shows up with an electric street rod. Saturday is the big car show over at Manti City Park. We showed up with BDX-9, the white Mustang, complete with its new speed shop sign in, of course, matching colors. We do have a warm spot in our heart for Mustangs. Check out this Mustang. This is a 68, kind of a homage to the California Special. Now, according to the legend, the California Special was supposed to confuse you into thinking it was a Shelby, but in fact it was made by a car dealership in California. Check out this beautiful 69 Fastback. Just a straight up gorgeous, gorgeous car. And as always, there were plenty of first-generation Mustangs, years 65 and 66. One of the reasons you see so many 65 and 66s is because Ford sold a lot of 65 and 66s. Oh, and check out this beautiful 73. 73 was the last year that the first generation Mustangs were made, then they went to the Mustang II. Now here's a slick little ride, and I have to say our granddaughter Mia really wanted to take this thing home. Said there was just enough room in the garage. And here we have the Mustang's brutal cousin, the 427 Cobra. This one's a replica, of course. The real ones almost never get out of the house. This is cool. This is Chrysler's answer to the Cobra, the Sunbeam Tiger. They took a Sunbeam Alpine, shoved a Ford small block in it, and then marketed it as a Chrysler. It is one of my favorite cars of all time. Love these things. And here we have the Camaro. You gotta love the Camaro, at least if you're all American. Karen does love Camaros. One of her first cars was a Camaro, and she was a regular cruiser in it. And the brutal cousin of the Camaro is the Corvette. And as always, there were plenty of Corvettes on hand. As always, there was a really good turnout of all-American muscle cars from Ford and Chrysler and Chevy, like this SS396 Malibu, which is actually a local car. But other than during the fuel embargo in the 1970s, muscle cars have always been amazingly popular, and they still are. Wow, check out the Mopar here. Back in the 70s, I was driving a 440 Magnum Challenger. That is, I was driving it when I could find gas to put in it. Ooh, a tri-power GTO. And this is real fine, a 409. The Rat Fink Reunion also attracts a good number of antique cars. This is in part because there's a lot of collecting of antique cars in this area. Most of these cars are local. Check out the 17 Model T. My third car was a Model T. I think I was 15 at the time. Now this is why we insist on teaching Mia to love cars. I mean, after all, she's practically 2. Check out the collection of Model A's. There's a lot of Model A's in the area. There's a really good Model A club, and maybe that's part of the reason. And a good collection of trucks. Trucks have really taken off. My brother sort of discovered trucks, of course, because of his love of antiques. If it was any newer than 1917, he wouldn't touch it. But trucks are cool, and they've really taken off. There's a ton of them showing up at the car shows these days. I'd really like to see more of the antique big rigs restored. As always, a good collection of late 30s through 50s bone stock original cars. Not all of them have been turned into hot rods, although it seems most of them have. Check out this beautiful pair of 57 Chevys. 57s are really popular. Here's an odd contraption. It's called a traffic light finder. You mount this on your dashboard. You see, back in those days, traffic lights were slung right in the very middle of the intersection, and when you were turning left, you couldn't see the darn thing to tell when it turned yellow. So you'd mount this on your dashboard, and it would allow you to see the traffic light reflected in the prisms. These days, they're just a novelty, like a suicide knob or a curb feeler. Yes, it does seem like many of the early cars have been turned into hot rods, and in fact what shows up at the car shows is predominantly hot rods. Which makes a good deal of sense here at the Rat Fink Reunion, since Ed was the dean of old school hot rodding. Here's a fun thing, a drag car built out of a Henry J. A lot of Henry J's were turned into drag cars because the things were practically free. But just about any car you can think of has been turned into a hot rod by somebody at some point in time. Wow, check this beast out. It's a Nash, but it's got both rear and front fender skirts, and something kind of interesting under the hood. With so many world-class stripers running around, it makes sense that they'd be striping right here in the middle of the car show, too. So it's not at all uncommon to see somebody striping on someone's car just under a tree somewhere. Here's a special kind of hot rod. They're built out of a Model T, a T-bucket roadster. Most of the Model T is thrown away. Some massive V8, often a Chevy engine, is shoved in there. No fenders, no hood, and no trunk. Here's an interesting car. It's a little miniature dragster, a child's dragster. There's a move afoot to try to get kids drag racing by building these little miniature dragsters. Not all of these cars are meant to be taken seriously. A lot of them are just flat whimsical. They're meant to be fun. Now here we have the Volkswagens. I think they're sort of whimsical by nature. I mean, even back in the 60s, they seemed sort of, funny. But the point with a lot of these cars is just have fun with them. Now, I guess you could call this one a work in progress, but some of these cars are meant to look like a pile of junk. Enter the rat rods. The whole point behind a rat rod is just to have fun making something really strange. This one's called Lab Rat, and it's one of our favorites. We've sort of adopted it as the mascot for Lab 6, our recording studio. But there are no rules when it comes to rat rodding. The idea is just be fun, be completely off the wall, be a little peculiar, and just plain have a lot of fun with it. A lot of the rat rods have really weird and esoteric shifters. I think this is a throwback to Rat Fink, where quite often the shifter went right out through the window of the car 3 feet or up through the roof of the car by 3 or 4 feet, and you practically had to stand up to grab the thing. Keep in mind that these things are truly hot rods. A lot of them are developing well over 400 horsepower. I don't know how safe I'd feel putting 400 horsepower in something that looks like this. And here we see that a shifter can also double as a major award. Another fun thing turning up at the car shows these days are travel trailers from the 1950s and 60s. Check this thing out. How fun is this? I've spent my whole life cursing travel trailers because they're usually going 15 miles an hour right in front of me. But this is quite fun. And here's another contender in the weird travel trailer department. Oh my. This year, as always, a few motorcycles have shown up. Be fun if a lot more motorcycles would show up for you chopper guys out there. Ed practically invented the chopper, and I don't know why more chopper people aren't showing up here at the Rat Fink Reunion. Ed published the very first magazine on choppers back in the 50s. Well, it's been a really, really good car show. The afternoon is wearing down, and it's just about time to disband. But that doesn't mean that the fun is over. Everybody's heading over to Main Street to do just a bit of cruising, and then everyone's going up to the museum, Eileen's house, for dinner, and finishing the whole thing up with the traditional banana split. Now you might think that a sleepy little Mormon village like Manti wouldn't really care much for a bunch of hot rodders and bikers coming through, but nothing could be further from the truth. They love the Rat Fink Reunion, and a bunch of people line the street to watch people cruising the boulevard.
I am stuffed.
Oh, I'm tired.
I'm tired and stuffed.
Yeah, we're tired and stuffed.
Full of ice cream.
No kidding.
Every day at the Rat Fink Reunion ends with a banana split.
That's right.
It's a tradition because Ed loved ice cream.
Yeah.
And so, in honor of Ed, and toward the end of his life, Rat Fink followed suit, and Rat Fink is always pictured with an ice cream cone in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Not a banana split, but anyway, we always finish off every day of the Rat Fink Reunion
with a banana split.
Is finished off with a banana split. And this year's car show was really good. I think that's the most cars.
That's the key. Every one of them were different from other years. I saw a couple of repeats, but most of them were newer.
Newer cars, different cars, more out-of-state cars, people from more distant lands coming in with their cars.
I ran clear across the park to look at that one car.
The trailer with the Impala taillights, that was pretty weird. Yeah. That was pretty weird and fun. But it was all fun and exhausting as always.
Right.
Well, if you haven't been to the channel, pop on over to the channel. There's almost 140 movies on the channel now. Everything from how to win grand prizes on the Midway, to tree houses, to locomotives, to restored airplanes, to you name it.
And even Rat Fink.
And even Rat Fink. Whatever people are doing to just screw around at the highest possible plane, it's over there. And by plane, I mean 4-engine bomber.
Yeah, or the Ford Trimotor.
Or the Ford Trimotor, one of my favorites. We had a ball in a Ford Trimotor. And it's there, it's all there. So pop on over to the channel and do subscribe. You can subscribe by clicking on the blue button, which will be appearing momentarily. In fact, it's appearing just now, right down here. Click on that, makes you a subscriber to Toyman Television here on YouTube. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again next week with another classic example of screwing around. See you then. Bye-bye.